Good afternoon, and this is our interview with Charles Forster Kane. Mr. Kane, it is understood that you are one of the most powerful owners of the mass media in the world. Is this true?
Yes, you could say so. I happen to own many newspapers, television stations, radio stations, and other mass media, as well as some film production companies, and I see nothing wrong with that.
And tell me, Mr. Kane, what is the purpose of having so much media under your control?
Well, if I don't do it, then somebody else will, and that would be worse. After all, I know how the world should think, and having control over so much media allows me to influence how people think.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kane, but what makes you think that you are better at knowing how people should live their lives? I mean, what makes you think that you're more right about how the world should be?
Well, I've lived long enough to see that if you leave the average person, him or her, to their own devices, and if you don't influence their way of thinking, they'll just make a big mess of things.
Well, don't you think that it's a person's right to make mistakes?
Of course it is their right to make mistakes, but it's also my right to help prevent them from doing that.
But as I understand, you have actually supported or even helped trigger wars. Is that not true, Mr. Kane?
Well, I guess you'd have to understand that sometimes, because of how imperfect societies are, you need wars. And wars are the byproduct of imperfect societies, and are also very useful ways of getting rid of the riffraff.
I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Kane. When you say the riffraff, what exactly do you mean?
Well, the undesirables in society, the ones who would otherwise make things even worse. By having wars, you send them off to war, and hopefully they don't come back.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kane, but that sounds like a terrible thing. Something you might expect to hear from a Nazi or a fascist. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think you're oversimplifying things. I'm certainly not a Nazi or a fascist. I do subscribe to the theory of survival of the fittest, and maybe the Nazis and the fascists would claim the same, but there is a difference. And the difference is that I don't believe in killing people just because they don't agree with me. Although I do think that it's a good thing if they're wrong, that they suffer the consequences and hopefully don't live to make more trouble.
I'm not sure I understand you, Mr. Kane. What exactly are you trying to say? Are you trying to say that you have the right to control people's way of thinking by controlling the mass media? Aren't you concerned about the right for people to be properly informed about the truth? You see, your mass media empire seems to be trying to sell people all kinds of superficial stories and keep them from thinking about what's really going on in the world. What do you say to that, Mr. Kane?
Well, now that's very clever of you to try to accuse me of trying to fully control everything. Obviously, I can't do that, otherwise I already would have. So I don't think that has any validity. Yes, people are going to make all kinds of accusations against me, and they do that because they're jealous.
But Mr. Kane, don't you think that the original purpose of newspapers and other media was to keep the public informed in order to be able to make the right decisions in a democratic society? And don't you think that by controlling the public's perception through your control over the mass media, you are denying people the most fundamental right to question authority and to investigate abuses of authority and to speak out freely about the imperfections of their society so as to better perfect their democracy? Don't you think you are threatening the whole idea of democracy by having so much control over people's opinions by controlling the media?
Well, that's a loaded question. Now, let me explain something again to you. The world is not interested in the truth. If it was, then it would not treat its geniuses the way it does. History has shown over and over and again that if somebody's a genius, they treat them bad. So why should us geniuses trust the majority of people in the world? We don't. We can't. So since we cannot trust the people, we must control the people. And since we cannot control them by physical force directly, we must control their perceptions. And by controlling their perceptions, we are able to do what is right, which is to provide that democracies work for our interest.
But Mr. Kane, what kind of democracy is it if people just don't know the truth?
Well, democracy is relative now, isn't it? I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect democracy. In order to protect the right of those who deserve to live, those who are smarter and stronger than the rest of society, you need to have control over society, otherwise society will destroy itself.
But Mr. Kane, what you are saying is just unbelievable. You are saying that in order to protect society, you have to harm society. Isn't that the same thing in the end? What you're saying is you're willing to harm society to so-called protect it? I mean, where is there any logic in that?
Well, I don't agree with your conclusion. As I've stated before, by controlling public perception, you protect the elite. Now, the elite are the people who deserve to be the elite, because they wouldn't be the elite if they weren't so smart and strong. And as I said, I subscribe to the idea that only the fittest should survive, and not the weak. And if you let all the weak people in the world and all the not-so-bright people in the world run the world, they'll just destroy it overnight. At least the way I'm doing things, I'm protecting the interest of the elite, and they pay me well for it, and I get all kinds of benefits, and nobody is the wiser down there. And I see nothing wrong with that. If there is any hope for humanity in the long term, it must be a more perfect humanity. And a more perfect humanity means that everybody is born healthy, that everybody is brilliant, and everybody is strong. And there's no room for tolerating weakness. If we tolerate weakness, you end up destroying your own society.